Hello guys, my name is Carlos Alvarado. This is MPA 594, week number 4. Quick overview, we're going to go ahead over the thesis and the three themes, which would be similarities. The second will be the differences. And then the third one will be what is truly important, and then a closing statement. I decided to go with the public school, and my public school will be Sun Valley High School, and my private school will be Village Christian High School. My thesis sentence is Sun Valley High School and Village Christian High School have similarities, differences, and critically essential distinctions between the two educational systems. Graham Allison explains that there is only one thing that's the same between the private and the public sector, and that is POSCOR. The first subtopic that I will be talking about, the first similarity will be about structure, and that is because both organizations, the public school and the private school, do have a hierarchy. Uh, so they have somebody in the top, and then it breaks down into the different positions in the organization. And some of the theories that I plan to use is Max Weber, Frederick Taylor, Luther Gulick, and Henry Fayol. And for example, Max Weber stated that an organization should have a hierarchy, and there also in this I'll be talking about how there's only supposed to be reporting to one. A person is only supposed to be reporting to one person, so there's a structure in there, and it's always from the top. Leadership is from top to bottom. On the second subtopic, I will be talking about policies and procedures because both organizations, the public and the private, both schools both have policies and procedures that employees and others must follow. So, and for this, I will be using the theorist Max Weber, and he talks about how there should be rules and procedures for like formal rules that employees must follow. And for Frederick Taylor, he also enforced that everything must be written down. So those are the two main theories that I will be using, along with I will be throwing a little bit of Henry Fayol in there and a little bit of Merton. Graham Allison said there, besides the passport, everything else was different. And so the first subtopic that I will be using is responsibilities and goals of each sector. The second subtopic I'll be talking about is the difference between hiring. In the private sector, the employer can really hire anyone they want. They could be by connections, it could be by the education, it could be by exactly anything. There's no set standard. For example, in the public sector, there is different standards. For example, a teacher in a public school must be certified by the state and also must have an education and a degree. And so there's big differences between that. And in the public sector, they're also trying to get employees that are full-time, long-term, and they want them to stay because of benefits and so that's the difference. In the private sector, on the other hand, um, they can let go of the employee. They can hire new staff, a better one, and there's no uh, difference between if they hire somebody or with experience or no experience, but they just want the best person. But in the school, they want teachers to be there for long term, 20 years, 30 years, by providing pensions, by providing benefits and different benefits that will make the employee want to stay longer. The responsibility for a public school is different than the private school. A public school must provide services to the community, usually funded by taxes, and a private school, on the other hand, its main responsibility is to make sure that it is uh, the best school for the persons that they're targeting. For example, if it's a religious school, then they can provide that religious beliefs of that school. So for a Christian school, a Catholic school, um, and that they can target just that. So their responsibility is to provide that service for that. In the private school, they could do that because they're not tied down to government standards. The last subtopic I'm going to talk about in the differences is accountability. Because public schools are public, they are accountable to the people of the community of the state, so they're looking into test scores. And on the other hand, the private school, their accountability is to, it can be either the head of the church, and so they're the ones that are checking the standards, but they don't really have to qualify and fit into the school standards set by the state. But a public school must follow all guidelines and everything. And since it is a public school, there could be scrutinized by the public, and they're more open and accessible to getting the public being able to either say that what they're doing is wrong, firing people because of not getting the job done, and so um, there's more accountability with the public school because it's held to a higher standard because it's viewed by so many people. The areas that I plan to use for employee responsibilities is Appleby and Allison, and so I plan to use Appleby because he's the one that's talking about how the public sector and the private management, how they are different, and he goes on to explain there's different criteria, and he uses John Duluth's 10 different things that are different from um, between the public and the private management. And then I also plan to use uh, Appleby because he's talking about how there's a difference between government and private sector, and how he talks about how the public sector is always being scrutinized. And I'm also going to go ahead and use them in an accountability. And I plan to use for the hiring and I'll be using Max Weber. I'll be using uh, Taylor. I will be using Gulick, and the reason I will be using them is because um, Max Weber goes in and explains about um, how he wants career-oriented employees for the long term, and how they should be paid with benefits and paid well so they can stay. And those are the theories that I plan to use. On the third theme, I plan to use what the important differences between the public school and the private school are. And one of them is constitutional differences, the impact of federalism on the organizations, and the equitable services that they must provide. Some of the constitutional rights I'll be using is I'll be talking about the Constitution, the Pendleton Act, and Allison. Those will be some main persons that I'll be using for this subtopic. But I'll go ahead and be talking about how funding uh, between the public sector, public school, and the private school. I'll also be talking about how a public school must provide services no matter who it is compared to a private school. And for example, a private school can deny someone because they're not that same religion. It has more options on who they can focus their services to, and talking about how it's funded and how the difference of that is. The second subtopic I'll be talking about is how federalism impacts the public schools, and one way is because I'll be mostly talking about how Godson's theory about the cooperative federalism, or also known as the marble cake federalism, is where uh, the state, the federal government, and city and like local governments are all work together to provide the service. In this case, would be the public school. So the state can get funding from the federal government. The funding gets transferred to the local government, and they all kind of work intertwined together. And that's how Grazin explains the new Marble Cake Federation federalism compared to the dual federalism, where everything was like a layer cake, and the state was separated from the federal, and the city worked different. But now it's all kind of more mixed in together. Equatable. Last subtopic will be equatable services, and one of the theories I'll be using here will be Allison and the Constitution and the amendments on how they explain um, equitable services. And so, a public school, they cannot choose and deny anyone, and they must provide equitable services to everyone. So, for example, ESL, special therapy, or special programs to make everybody equal. And for example, in the private school, they don't have to provide any of those services. So there's no in the government. Allison states that it tends to look for more equity compared to efficiency on the private sector and the public schools. So the public schools are more trying to provide service to everyone, while the private schools, are more for efficiency, and that's how they are run. Thank you for watching my video, and I'd just like to say it's been a long 4 weeks, but we are in the halfway point, and we can just keep our heads up, and this is just we're almost there. And good luck, everyone.